All right. Welcome to the podcast. We've moved on from Ezra. There's no more rap, and Jeff's not happy about it.
No, yeah. Bum, 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 bum.
You used to like it.
I know. I liked it until...
You used to play the piano part with your mouth every week. Now you're hating on it.
Well, once I rapped, it kind of broke the mold.
Whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we've got a special guest with us this week. Will's joining us.
Howdy, howdy.
So glad to have you, Will.
South Shipping Family Pastor here at Emmanuel.
Yep. Will's been on staff. How long you been here now?
20 months.
20 months. That's like a baby. You start counting months. How
Yeah,
many?
That's right.
So almost 2 years.
It's not a year and a half, and it's not 2 years, so
there you
it's
go.
20 months.
No, it is a year. It is over a year and a half.
It
It's over a
is.
year and a half. Yeah.
Yeah, we're right in between
But it's more than a year and a half, so 20 months. Yeah.
20
That's
months.
funny.
Nice.
Yeah, I stopped counting months with my kids when they were like, well, I guess when they hit a year. Like you hit a year, you're a year old.
Yeah. 16 months old, 17 months old, 18
Yeah.
month old.
But Will's the kind of person that keeps up with that kind of stuff. So
I
it's
do.
great.
I do. Totally.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. He's almost 2.
You know what you have to think, though, is that, like, with your birthday, so, like, when you're 1, you've lived a year.
Correct.
When you're 2, you're not 2, you're really more than 2.
You're entering your third year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I turn 60, I will have lived 60 years. I will be in my 61st year, even though I'm 60.
Yes.
Correct?
Correct.
Fourth quarter.
Definitely fourth quarter.
Fourth quarter.
100%.
You just took
the
age to another level. Like, I feel like it's not that deep.
Yeah. You got to think about that. It is deep.
Whatever. But anyways, yeah, Patty Patty would love to be with us this morning, but she is getting a couple dental procedures done, getting some crowns and
Man, that's tough.
all that fun stuff. I kind of wish she was in here since she'd be talking with
Yeah, man, that's do not want to be in that seat.
No. I love dentists.
I know.
I hate going to the dentist
That-
because
I
I
think-
have terrible teeth.
That would be a hard job to have because everybody needs you, but everybody hates going to see you.
Yeah. Maybe not everybody. Taylor, I mean, there's my wife doesn't mind going. People who have good teeth don't mind going.
Well, I
Because
guess
it's
that's
just
true.
like, oh, you get to go get your teeth cleaned.
Yeah.
I
Oh, you're
go and
perfect.
I-
Oh, you're
yeah.
perfect. Never had a cavity. Perfect.
Makes me so mad.
Yeah, that's not.
I got my first cavity last year.
No way.
First one.
Really?
Yes. I was so angry.
How many months old were you? I'm just kidding.
What year were you living in?
480.
Not how old you were. What year were you living in?
Yeah, all right.
Ooh, 42nd.
Yeah, I've got I've got a ton of cavities. Anyways, so here we are. We're back to the mornings again. So now we're all over the place.
It's kind of late morning though.
Yeah, it's fine. But we'll jump in. We started a new sermon series this week, jumping into Nehemiah. It was our Vision Sunday. So we kind of launched our capital campaign building project. We've been talking about it for a while. So it's kind of just an official start to what we already know is happening.
Right.
But do you want to talk anything about that? Give any, information, updates, what's coming up with the capital campaign?
Man, I think it's just an exciting time for our church. You know, when we're finally able to move forward and to see some things happen here on our campus. And I know that a lot of people in our body have been looking forward to this for a lot of years.
Yeah.
You know, not just the short time, the 6 years that I've been here, but even before that, you know, where they would come to this spot, come to this door and kind of back up, come to this door, something back up. And it finally feels like now we're going to be able to break through and actually see some neat things happen. So, man, I think it's exciting that our people are so behind it.
Yeah.
You know, that our body is so affirming. And so I think we had a great launch Sunday. You know, we had 10 additions Sunday that, you know, I knew of one family coming, but all the others, I think were just all of them were just God moving. But
Yep.
I think it's just really neat to see the Holy Spirit moving and just continuing to affirm every Sunday what He's doing here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's humbling to be a part of too.
Yeah, and it's weighty. That's the thing I was talking to John about this morning. You know, people probably don't sense or feel that like we do. It's just a very weighty time that we're in right now. You know, where it's a very important time in our church, life of our church, and so the emphasis that we're going to be having on prayer, the emphasis that we're going to be having on fasting and things of that nature, I think are really important right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important too, like there's the capital campaign side of it, of the money side. Like we have to raise money and that's important, but it's so much more. We talked about it Sunday. It's so much more than just the buildings. It's so much more than just
absolutely.
the church building in itself. It's about the people. It's about the people that are getting ministry, and then being able to, and equipped to then go out and do ministry in our community.
And that's really what I wanted to focus on Sunday, was not so much, this is really not about us launching a campaign to raise money. I mean, obviously that's a piece of the puzzle that has to happen, but it's more the why.
Yeah.
Why are we doing this? Why, what is the crisis we sense and feel like Nehemiah did? We'll talk about it in just a minute. And then how are we going to respond to that?
Yeah.
And so hopefully we're able to paint that picture and really get a good why as to why we're doing this.
Yeah, that's good. So as we press into Nehemiah, we pray that the Lord leads in that series, and we're already seeing Him do that in kind of the direction that some of the messages are going. But to jump in today, we just kind of hit the first part of Nehemiah on Sunday, and really the focus was on a lot of family ministry and our kids, our generations to come, which is the For Generations to Come is the name of our campaign, because it's the people that we have here are important, but also our kids, our students, they're being attacked at every angle. And so we'll get into some of the statistics that you mentioned on Sunday in a little bit, but that's why Will's with us. He's our family and discipleship pastor.
Exactly right.
That's right.
So kind of to kick us off, maybe Will, how important in today's culture, I'll read some of these stats in a little bit if you didn't hear Sunday, but how important in today's culture is family ministry?
I think it's maybe equipping families may be one of the most important things that we do in the church. For so long, we built incredible student ministries, incredible children's ministries, but we left parents out. Well, now we look, fast forward 20, 25, 60 years later, after kind of the invention of children's and student ministries within the church, we see that biblical worldview of parents is at 2%. That means the biblical worldview of the next generation's even lower.
Yeah.
The importance of church has gone down. The importance of disciple making within the home is it's non-existent for the most part. Why? Because we professionalize discipleship to pastors and to children's directors and student ministers, and we've taken away from home. Well, now our job, and just looking through all the research and the study and trying to figure out where we are, our job now is to equip parents to disciple their kids. Well, that means we come alongside the parents, and we are part of the process, but we are secondary to the parents.
Right.
That's why we've moved to Wednesday night discipleship for the whole family, not just children, youth, some choir, and some adult stuff. We want to equip the whole family. Yeah. And updating our spaces is incredibly important as well, because we need functioning spaces to do discipleship, to walk alongside kids and parents and students and parents, and then give them a space to bring their friends, to learn about the gospel, to evangelize, to do all the things that we would expect them to do, but then we equip parents on the backside. Yeah. And really on the front side, not the backside.
Right.
And then they take it home, and then we equip them to have those conversations within the home. So it is incredibly important for us to reach the whole family, not just segments, not siloed portions. But part of that is we have to update our spaces to be able to do that, to effectively minister to the generations.
Yeah, sure. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And we've already had a parent equipping event last year. We had a marriage equipping event, and all these are very important in that process.
Absolutely. And we're good. I can't say much yet, but we are scheduling our next parent equipping event for next fall.
Awesome.
And it's going to be incredible. Yeah. I mean, incredible. The group we have coming in is just, y'all are going to love them. Yeah. It's going to be awesome. We're looking at doing another marriage equipping as well soon. So we got a lot going on.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and we're hoping that that event will be the launch of our new student building.
Yes, that would be absolutely incredible.
Yeah,
awesome.
Kind of our prayer from a scheduling perspective is that if we can kind of get things moving forward, there's a possibility that would be the first event that we do. We know, or that our student building would be ready to launch at the beginning of next school year.
Yeah.
which would be
amazing.
incredible. But it also sends the picture we want, that parents are important.
That's right. Absolutely.
Right. So this is not a building just for students. It's for the greater congregation.
Right.
The main emphasis of the building is the students, but we're going to equip generations out of that building.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's awesome. That's good. So jumping into Nehemiah a little bit more, we just came out of our Ezra series. So Ezra really is the context of Nehemiah. So we've got that context. But those first 4 verses that we looked at Sunday, the end of it talking about how Jerusalem was completely destroyed, the walls were destroyed. So just to kind of start us off in that text, why did God allow the Babylonians to conquer Jerusalem and the people in it and to destroy the city?
Yeah, that's a great question that goes back, man, several years, beginning of Ezra, all of that.
Yeah.
But when you read it in the other prophetic writings, it's very, very clear that God did allow this to happen. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't just the disobedience of the Israelites.
Right.
That God, God in His providence and His glory, He saw that, and He knew what was best for them was to be in captivity for that time period, and so it's exactly what He did. He raised up Nebuchadnezzar, and so it's hard for us to think about God using secular people, God using people in history that we know are historical figures, and you think, well, no, they're not believers, they're not followers of God, because those kings they would acknowledge God, but they were very pluralistic. They had multiple gods, so it wasn't like Nebuchadnezzar was a follower of God. It wasn't like Cyrus was a follower of God because he allowed them to go back. They were pluralistic, so they would recognize that, but they were not committed to that, and so God allowed that to happen because He knew what was best for His chosen people, for the people that were called the Israelites. And so in that, God allowed that to happen. He told them exactly how long they were going to be there, 70 years. And as soon as that 70 years was up, just like the Jeremiah prophesied, and they were able to go back and start rebuilding Jerusalem.
I think that's the pattern of the Old Testament, though. If you look from the book of Judges, you look at God's commands to Moses.
Yes.
And you look at just throughout the whole Old Testament, Israel worshiped God. They became comfortable. They disobeyed. There was punishment. They repented, and they worshiped. And then they got comfortable. They disobeyed. And so there was this whole cycle that would happen, and it even happens today in our spiritual lives as well, that we have to be very careful about. But God promised them, if you listen and obey, everything's okay.
Yeah.
Is basically what the this is how I tell my kids. The moment you get out of line, it's not. And God allows us to be punished, allows us to face the consequences of our actions, so that because it's His loving kindness that allows us to repent and follow Him. Mm-hmm. And but we can't. Oftentimes, we don't repent without consequences. Right. And unfortunately, the consequences are oftentimes pretty devastating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like losing your temple, being put in captivity. But what happened? Israel always repented.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. They always came back to back to God. That's right.
Yeah, that's good. And I think it comes back to that, we talked the last few weeks about God's ultimate will, His plan, that we don't fully see the full picture. We see our little part of it. If we nitpick or think about just a small section, it's easy to question things. But God has an ultimate plan that He's fulfilling. So kind of jumping into a lot of the focus on Sunday was about the generations to come. So this Gen Alpha generation of our kids, and Gen Z, which is mostly our students and college students. And so just a couple that you gave a lot of stats about Gen Alpha, but just to mention a couple of them that really stood out to me, that 15% of parents say that only 15% of parents say the most important parenting goal is to pass down their faith to their children.
Yeah. That's
pretty staggering. And that's not 15% of Gen Alpha parents. That's 15% of Gen Alpha Christian parents.
Right.
And then 67% of U.S. parents of preteens identify as Christian, but only 2% possess a biblical worldview.
Yeah.
Which is also just, and Will, you mentioned that a second ago as well, but just, super eye-opening, but also just a huge wow And I think a lot of times it makes sense. Like you think about people that, oh yeah, I'm a Christian, but claiming that Christianity versus actually having that biblical worldview and living it out is so different.
Right.
So go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think a lot of those people that, I think those two statistics can very easily mirror the condition of the church.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And I think that's what's scary, because, we began to see even back in the 90s when we first started this conversation about parental, there's always this conversation in student ministry about parental involvement in student ministry. How involved should parents be? What should their role be? Back in the day, it was a monthly newsletter, and then we just needed to keep them informed.
Yeah.
And we just wanted them to, we wanted them to bring their kids to us, let us kind of do the discipling, and we'll send them back to them, and we'll keep you informed.
Right.
And then we began recognizing, man, that's not working.
Yeah.
And so the conversations began to be had, and all of a sudden things were changing, and now the student ministry model may not be working, and all this was happening while we began to realize, and kind of rediscover almost this Deuteronomy 6 model that, man, parents, God has a model for discipleship.
Yeah.
And his model is that parents disciple their kids.
Yeah.
And we come in and we support that, and we partner with them in that process. And so I think these statistics still reflect a model that says, man, like the 15% of parents, I don't necessarily know that means that only 15% of Christian parents of Alpha are concerned about their child's spirituality.
Sure.
I think what that means is only 15% of that group assume the responsibility of passing their faith down to their children.
Right.
Because I think there could be a percentage of that group that just feels like, well, I bring them to church and I give them to you. That's what you're supposed to do.
Right.
So, I'm trusting you to do that for me. So I think, Will, you've probably seen this too. I think there's some, we look at that and we go, oh my goodness, 85% of Gen Alpha's Christian parents don't love Jesus. I don't think that's the case, but I do think, to Will's point, we've not made the emphasis enough, and we've emphasized it here a lot, that parents are the primary spiritual developers of their children. Deuteronomy 6 is a great model for discipleship. That's what God gave Moses to give to the people.
Yeah.
And it should have never changed, but over the years we've professionalized ministry. And so at that point, the job of discipling children was given to the religious professionals.
Yeah.
And I think parents are modeling what was modeled to them.
Absolutely.
Right. So it's not, I don't think that 15%, that the 85% necessarily want other people to disciple their kids. I just don't think they know any better, because we've said, bring your kids here.
Right.
We haven't emphasized their spiritual development. We haven't given them tools to disciple their kids. Well, they were never discipled.
Right.
So it was always modeled, just come here, get filled, go out.
Right.
Where discipleship is more than that.
Yeah.
It's passing on a generation of faith to
Yeah.
whether your kids or a coworker you've led to the Lord, or even maybe in my case, maybe even like my parents.
Mm-hmm.
And so discipleship's more than just sitting, soaking, and souring.
Yep.
It's an act of faith being passed on to somebody else.
Yep.
And so parents have unfortunately just weren't engaged in discipleship. It was just come here, have fun, learn a little bit about the Bible, and go home.
Yeah.
So
and our churches were very program driven.
Very much so.
Right.
And so in the context of that, we had programs to kind of take care of these things. And so we trained a couple of generations of parents that this is how your kids are discipled. Mm-hmm. You bring them to the house. Now, you could be saying, well, aren't you, man, it really sounds like, you're saying, based on your message, we've got to build the walls. And metaphorically, we're talking about, our facilities that we're going to create so that we can provide boundaries and protection and provision for our kids and for our students, right? So what we're not saying is bring them to us,
right?
Run to us so they can hide from the world. We're saying we've got to create those places where parents can learn how to disciple their kids, where kids can learn. And I think it is important for kids and students to see that there can be environments that are safe, that are fun, that you can have a great time in the Lord, and it doesn't have to look like, it doesn't have to be the world,
Yeah.
because we don't, I think what we don't understand or we don't want to accept for some reason is that we're in a battle every single day.
Right.
Man, we want to wake up and just feel good, and it's all good, and it's neutral, and I'm going to choose to kind of, we just don't live in a neutral world. We live in a world where we wake up, and sometimes that battle feels stronger, that battle feels harder, and in other days it doesn't. But we've got to understand that, and so the world is never taking a day off in coming after our kids.
Yeah.
It's just not taking a day off,
Right.
And so, when I think about Nehemiah and Nehemiah's concern about Jerusalem, he had never been there. So think about that. Like we think that Nehemiah, had been there, had seen the glory, understood it.
Right.
He'd never been there.
Wow.
He just heard about it. But here's what he knew: it was the city of God. Like he knew that was where God's people resided.
Right.
That was the what God had chosen to use, and it was in shambles. It was in disgrace, and he couldn't stand that. He couldn't sleep at night. He couldn't, because he knew that part of that battle was still raging.
Yeah.
And God began to work in his heart to go and to do what he could, to do that. And so I think we need to understand that battle is still going on.
Yeah.
That our world every single day, it's not a God-fearing world. It's not a world that's driven by principles of God. It's a world that's ruled, the Bible says, by the prince of the air.
Yeah.
Right, which is Satan. And so we know in all that we're seeing in culture changing and things of that nature, we know what that's being driven by.
Yeah.
So the question is, do people in our communities look at our churches and take them seriously? Mm-hmm. Do people walk in our facilities and look around and see that we take seriously the battle that we're in and what we're fighting for? Mm. And I believe that's what Nehemiah felt when he said that it was in disgrace, because the walls were torn down, things were in shambles, the temple was rebuilt, but it wasn't anything like it was before. So it was just, the enemies could walk by and look at Jerusalem and go, man, that's nothing anymore. It's nothing anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying every church has to be a Taj Mahal. I don't think that's the point. But I think the point is, though, does the world take seriously? Do people in our communities look at us and say, we're taking seriously the discipleship, rescuing our kids and students, from what the world is trying to do to them?
Yeah. So with that, what does, we talk about the importance of family ministry, of setting up parents to disciple their kids and students well. So then we're obviously not saying that the church is not important at that point for kids and students. We still want
absolutely.
students and kids here on campus. So what then would be the purpose of our kids and our students being here on campus and of those ministries?
Yeah, so we partner with parents,
Yeah.
right? And there's something incredible, and we are so blessed here to have Mike and Rachel investing in our kids, and Patty as well. And so their partnership with you as parents, they know culture, student culture, children culture. They are up to date on all the latest research and teaching strategies and techniques, and they build incredible Sunday school programs and Wednesday night services for your kids. And all those are important. We're not family integrated. We don't believe in doing away with children's and student ministry. We believe that there's a place that every kid and every youth has a learning level that needs to be met. And so that learning level will be especially seen in Sunday and Wednesday programming. So we are specifically reaching them in the proper age range that they're supposed to be in so they can capture more information.
Yeah.
But we also believe that Mike and Rachel and Patty as well, and her role, have a place to train your children in things like worldview and in apologetics and theology, and how does the Bible apply to your life, and they walk alongside parents in doing that. They don't do it in a silo and say, hey, just know that your kids have had fun today and they've learned this. I mean, they're walking alongside our parents. So our spaces reflect that and our ability to do that, and that's why space is important. And so Mike and Rachel have that role. to walk alongside, building great environments. We're not going to do away with them. We want to enhance them as we're enhancing our ability to reach parents and equip parents as well.
Yeah.
And we've got to think about it this way, and we don't think about it this way, but we have to. If you take, just take today, the average attender today because of COVID. Our attendance used to be, you would say an average attender would attend 2 to 3 times a month. Mm-hmm. Okay, because of COVID, that has shifted down to 1 to 2 times a month.
I think it's 1.7 is the average time for a family to come to church.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So let's give them the benefit of the doubt and let's say 2. So they're coming 2 times a month. Okay. So think about that. 2 times a month. They're coming 24 times a year.
Yeah.
Here. Okay. So let's again give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they're coming 2 hours a week. Let's just go ahead and say, let's just say, man, this is the committed family. They're coming 1 hour on Sunday morning and they're coming 1 hour on Wednesday night. Okay. I want you to think about this. That's 48 hours a year.
Wow.
That's 48 hours a year. We get them. We get them 2 days a year. 2 days a year. We think in our minds we spread that out and it's so much more. But the reality is the only emphasis, like if you're handing our kids to us and your students to us and you want us to disciple them, just know this. They're getting 2 days a year of discipleship from us. Now, where are they the other 363 days of the year? They're with mom and dad.
Yep.
So you tell me, when you look at God's plan,
or they're with mom and dad, or they're with friends, they're in the world, they're with school.
That's exactly right. Yeah, they're not with us.
Right.
They're not at the place where, we would say, I mean, just kind of back it up and think about this. 10 months out of the year. So 10 months out of the year, what's the average school day? 6 hours a day?
8 hours, I think, is about 7 to 8 hours.
The school day?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just say 7. So 10 months out of the year, 7 hours a day, 5 days a week. That's how much time we commit to them being educated. And if we're just depending on the church, we only give 2 days a year to that.
Wow.
And that's why Moses was so adamant in Deuteronomy 6
Yes.
about the role of the parent. You are to tell your kids the commandments, statutes, decrees, right? That's the Old Testament, what they were told in the history. When you wake up and when you lie down,
right?
When you sit down, when you have a meal, or when you're on the road going somewhere, driving in the car to school, to the sporting event, to the grocery store. His point was you were to disciple your kids. You were to tell them at all times.
Yeah.
Not that you can't talk about baseball. Liam and I are on a big baseball kick. We're talking about baseball right now, and it's fun. And Carly's all into soccer, and Livy's whimsical and dancing around everywhere, and talking about princesses. So we get to have those fun conversations. But my job, we can have those conversations. We should. But where's Jesus being brought into the conversation on a regular basis? Well, when you wake up, when you lie down, when you sit down at the table, that's why family meals are so important. It's one of the most important times of your day is to have dinner together.
Yeah.
And then when you're walking around, it's so important. And that's the model of discipleship. Discipleship's not some crazy, hard thing to do. It's just every day talking about the Lord and what he's done. As parents, we should be telling our kids about our quiet times and about our time in church and what the Lord taught us, and just reiterating those things. That's what discipleship really looks like.
Yeah.
Well,
and when you think about what Moses was saying, what God was saying to Moses and Moses to the people, when he talked about lying down, waking up, put it on your doorpost, put it on your, all those types of things. I mean, Moses was really describing a lifestyle.
That's exactly right.
Which we got in a couple podcasts ago to informal discipleship, right? Yeah. It's this informal discipleship that's happening in your home because it's who you are.
That's right.
It's not, from 8 to 8:30, we need to do this and do this and do this. it's fine to have structured times to spend time with your kids and students. But I think all the other hours, it's just that informal discipleship because they're watching you live and they're watching what you do in the mornings. And
That's
they're
right.
watching, and I think that's what Moses is trying to communicate. Like,
Yeah.
hey, pay attention. Every hour of every day, your kids are looking at you.
That's
And-
right.
And they're going to know by your life and what you emphasize and what you push in them, who and what you follow.
That's right. You are discipling your kids in something.
All the
Right?
time. That's
all
right.
the time. So whether you're discipling them in Jesus or you're discipling
Right.
them in the world, you are, and this is very convicting for me as a not just a pastor but as a father. My kids are watching everything I do.
Yeah.
And I'm watching my son become more and more like me.
Yep.
And in some ways I'm like, yes. In other ways I'm like, ooh, I got to change that behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Because we're always discipling our children in something.
That's right. And I remember we used to, and I still tell people and tell dads that, our goal is that a mom and a dad are the most important spiritual people in a kid's and student's life.
Absolutely.
It's not their youth pastor, it's not their kids pastor or kids director, or it's not their senior pastor or worship leader. It's mom and dad.
Yeah.
And I would love for a kid and a student, because the thing we got to remember is we don't live in a culture, because of the way our culture is, where kids and students immediately recognize their parents as spiritual people, as spiritual leaders.
Yeah.
Right? Because with the way we've set up ministry and with the way we've set up our churches, they look to the church people for that.
That's right.
But they don't look at mom and dad for that. They look at mom and dad to be taxis and ATMs and cooks and maids and all those things that moms and dads are supposed to do for our kids.
Yeah.
But when it comes to, does my child, does my student really look at me as a spiritual person,
Yeah.
Yeah.
a spiritual leader, a spiritual director of our family?
Yeah.
That's what we want. We want our kids, our students and kids, to be going to mom and dad, asking them the questions.
That's right.
That's why we have dads in the baptismal pool as much as we can,
Yeah.
because we want to do everything we can do to set that dad up in that spot so that the kids look to them.
That's right.
And
And I think that's so important. You in the sermon this weekend mentioned that we are at war,
right.
right? Everything in society is telling their kids that parents are no longer important.
Yeah.
You look at every Disney movie in the last 30 years, the dad and the mom are always either bumbling or ignorant, right? So they have to do everything on their own. They're being taught through other means that their parents are old fashioned and wrong. And so we are at war to be the primary influence with our kids.
Right.
And we have to be so incredibly intentional in it. And that's one thing I loved when we first came here 20 months ago, and we saw you baptize a child for the first time and the dad was in the baptismal. I was like, yes, because it paints the picture that dad is, it's a conviction for the father, but it's also a visual for the child to see that
Right.
father. And you say this every time we baptize a child or a student, that the dad and the mom are the spiritual, the primary spiritual influence in their life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's so important that we as parents recognize that we are at war with society. And I hate using that language, but that's really what we are at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that we have to take back that. That's why we have to be incredibly intentional in our own spiritual lives, but how we shepherd our children.
Right.
Yeah, that's good. That's super good. So on Sunday or Nehemiah, the story of Nehemiah, they're building the walls. So you mentioned we've got to build the walls on Sunday. What are those walls, and what does it mean for us to build those walls? Because it's not go ahead and answer that. I know you mentioned walls of protection and walls of provision on Sunday, but how do we build those walls?
Yeah, I think it starts with, and it really ties into kind of where we are with our vision and our capital campaign program, is, for us, I want people to see that we take seriously our kids and our students. And obviously, we know, and I mentioned this, we take our senior adults very seriously and love our senior adults, love our middle range adults and our young adults. It's not that we're trying to isolate or forget any generation, because we know that, one of our values is every generation matters.
Yeah.
But I think our generations that are most at risk, I think better way to say it is our kids and students.
Yeah.
So I think, it's kind of at the end of the day, okay, well then put your money where your mouth is.
Right.
Let's see that we have, and I think this church over the years has wanted to do that. And just now, for such a time as this, the Lord's giving us the opportunity to move forward into that. And so I think, when I think about a student building, and that's just dedicated to students, will young adults use it? Yes, they will. Will college use it? Absolutely. Will parents use it? Of course. We'll do seminars and things like that. But our students will know, man, this church values us. They love us so much that they were willing to build us a building, a really nice building that's just ours.
Yeah.
That's our refuge. That's our place that we can come to, that, we can have an identity. I remember Darren telling me years ago, there was an old house here that the students met in, and they called it the refuge, and there was a lot of unity at that point in time in student ministry because students want their place.
Yep.
They want a place to gather. That's just how students are wired. And so I think for me, when I think of building the walls, I really think about, man, are we willing to, and it's a direct correlation. Are we willing to lay the bricks and the stones and whatever it takes to have these places where we know our students and children feel like, man, this is a safe place for me.
Yeah.
This is a haven of protection from the world, because we have to have that. We're in the world, fighting a war, fighting a battle, and I think something that people need to understand. I don't want to be at war.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to wake up and know that I'm battling every day. Like I can't wait for the day that that's not the case. But that's just not where we are right now. As long as we're here, and as long as we're on this earth, we just got to wake up every morning and fight the battle. And so as we think about that, and you think about, okay, if I really take that mentality and I'm kind of building my fortresses of things that I want to protect, and I want to protect our kids and our students because I think they're at most risk. And I think that was, really what I was trying to communicate with the metaphor of we have to build the walls, because, that's exactly what Nehemiah knew. Without walls, Jerusalem was exposed to their enemies. They were exposed to disgrace. They, the people in Jerusalem looked around and saw no walls. So how did that make them feel?
Yeah.
They knew they were exposed every single day of their life. And I'm sure they felt like nobody takes us seriously. Because, man, all they got to do is come in here and attack us. We're open to attack, which happened fairly regularly back then.
Yeah. Yeah. So with that, obviously there's the building the walls of the buildings, but then there's the personal side, the spiritual side of building walls. Obviously we're not going the Trump route of we're going to build the walls to keep everything out. But when you said we got to build the walls, I immediately thought of
no. Trust me. When I was preparing this last week, I thought to myself, okay, I wonder how many people are going to hear that message and think build the wall. I was like, because I almost wanted to preface it that I thought, no, don't even go down that road because that's not anywhere close to the point. But in application though, I do think walls do keep things out.
Yeah.
And I think walls keep things in,
Yep.
So I think it's both. And I think that there are things that our kids need to know they could come here and not be exposed to the things of the world.
Sure.
And that the world's not going to come inside the walls.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we've got to build a training center where we're training and discipling and partnering with parents so the kids can go back into the world equipped.
Right.
To fight the battles that they have to fight.
Yes, that's kind of what I was getting to is how do we train our kids and disciple them to build the walls, to understand that aspect of it, of the safety and the understanding and the discipleship, while also getting outside the walls, which is equally and almost sometimes more important. Like that's what we've been called to do, is to go and to make disciples. So how do we both build the walls and also get outside the walls?
Well, that's a great question. I think what's incredibly important is that as we are training students up and discipling them as parents and as ministry leaders, that we emphasize to our students, and I think Mike is actually doing a really good job of this right now, and I know Rachel does too, that they are to take what they're learning here and apply it to their life at school or maybe at their job or in their sport. And so as we're training them up, we're giving them a Christian worldview, which I think is incredibly important. We want to stem that 2% tide, right? We want our kids, we can only handle what's happening here at Emmanuel, right? And it's our job to give them a Christian worldview, train them up, equip parents to help walk alongside them in that. And then we say, hey, look, it's your job to go make disciples of your classmates. So who in your sphere of influence can you bring here to learn about Jesus, right? Or can you start having spiritual conversations with?
Right.
Right. So if the only thing we're doing is hoarding people and we're saying, hey, you just come here and you become a good person here and don't worry about what's going on here, then we've lost the Great Commission.
Yeah.
Right. So our job is to say, hey, this is a safe place for you to be. And this is a safe place for you to bring your lost friends.
Yeah, that's right.
Where they will get loved on. They will hear the gospel. But we aren't to stay here. We're to go.
Yep.
Right. So all authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. Go.
Yep.
Right. Go. And so it has to be go make disciples.
Yep.
Right. So that's really the crux of what we're looking at. And the walls, yes, do keep us safe. They are a safe place for us. But we also need to go beyond the walls and bring people back in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not us four and no more.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And I think that's what we have to be careful of, is that we're not trying to isolate ourselves from the world, because Jesus said we are going to be in the world, but we're not to be of the world.
That's right.
And so how do we help, again, with the onslaught of culture and the onslaught of an anti-God feel in our culture and community? How do we provide that place where our kids know that, man, this is where they're going to be equipped, and we're going to partner with moms and dads in this process of helping them know how to.
Yeah.
And again, what's our job? To be an image bearer of Jesus.
Yep.
Well, we can't just all bear Jesus's image to each other. We all know Jesus.
Yeah.
Right? We're to bear the image of Jesus to those who don't know him.
Right.
And so that's, again, that healthy partnership with moms and dads is so important.
That's right. And so we want to go reach families, right? That even means that in a family ministry that we're reaching non-Christian families
Absolutely.
as well, right? We want to bring them in. We want to help equip them too, because they're asking questions. People are confused about the worldview that is predominant right now in culture. Not that everybody holds to it. I think a lot of us are suspicious of it, even non-believers. And so they're asking good questions right now. What in the world's going on? And we have the answers.
Right.
So for us, it's incredibly important that we start bringing non-Christian families in for equippings and when they're here, that they're hearing the gospel and they know how they're seeing that we care for the next generation, their kids, their grandkids, and they want to stay here because they feel safe. But we have to share the gospel with them.
Yeah.
That's right.
The gospel's preeminent. But what we're doing here is bigger than just for the chosen frozen, right?
Yeah.
Right. The ones that we're never supposed to have such big walls that people can't get in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And we focus a lot on students and kids, but I think it's so big, like we're talking about in their culture, because they're being attacked. Like the young adults, middle adults, senior adults, like they're all equally as important. But also we've got a little bit more life, that we have a little bit more maturity. We have a little bit more understanding. Like they're in this development phase that it's so important for them to understand and be grounded in who they are.
Yeah.
So when I think about building walls, it's building walls of protection, but it's also building our understanding of who Jesus is, who he says he is, what his word says he is. So training them in that, to have that underunderstanding, so that when they go into the world, they have that foundation that they can lean on.
That's right.
Right.
And,
It's
Absolutely.
so huge.
and I think one thing that you kind of alluded to this just a second ago, I think is really important about what we're doing is we're not just building children's and youth space.
Yeah,
Or an
for
awesome gathering center, which we
Right.
desperately need.
Right.
We're updating our senior adult space.
Yep.
Right.
And that is an incredible need too, because senior adults are asking really hard questions like, what in the world is going on in this world?
Yeah.
Where am I safe?
Yeah.
I feel lonely.
Yeah.
I need other people.
That's right.
And we've seen senior adults come join recently.
Absolutely.
Even some accept Christ.
Yep.
Right? And so that space is incredibly important for us, not just physical space, but also our senior adults are the bedrock of our congregation.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're the ones I look to saying, how do I do this?
Yep.
Yep.
Right? But they're asking good questions too, and they need to be equipped too. And we have incredible Sunday school teachers and leaders within our congregation doing a great job there. But this is for them as well, because they're needing help navigating a culture that is foreign. This is an alien culture.
For sure.
That they're asking questions about, how do I disciple my kids and my grandkids as a senior adult?
I'll tell you that the biggest statistic that impressed me the most, not impressed me in a good way, but just impressed upon me the most, was this idea that when I think about, my grandchildren are, Julie corrected me on the ages, 4 months old, Graham's 4, and then Elaine's 4 months old, Elaine's 4 years old, and I'm probably going to get this wrong. Birdie is 3, and Braylon is 8. Okay, so all 4 of my grandchildren will grow up in a world where sexual identity is an option.
Yep.
They will never know a world where your sexual identity was how you were born.
Right.
How confusing is
Now
that?
think about that, man. I mean, all of the generations have grown up in a world where it hasn't been that way. This Gen Alpha, this generation will grow up with that being an option. And I just, that just really, maybe it's just because of the age of my grandkids, but I thought, their world, because I know we talk about electronics, we talk about we talk about all that kind of stuff. And yeah, those things can make it, but you want to talk about something that is just ground level. I mean, Hannon, your kids,
Yeah.
dude, Hannon will not know a world
Right.
where a guy that was born a guy is just a guy,
Right.
and a girl born a girl is just a girl. Like he'll grow up in a world thinking, looking at a form where he goes, where it says, I think it says sex, and it says male, female. There's only 2 options in my world.
Right.
In Hannon's world, there's going to be multiple options.
Yep.
And that will be normal to him.
Yep. It's scary. And again, in the midst of all of that so important development that they're going through.
Yes.
Like I'm teaching them, what color is this?
Right.
That is red. What color is this? That is blue. He's struggling with colors, so we're not there yet. But like the difference in yes and no, like there is
Right.
a for sure and a for sure. And now all of a sudden, is this a boy or a girl? Well, I am pushing hard to say this is a boy.
Yes.
This is a girl, but also like he's going to be told other than that. everywhere
Well,
else.
and what's behind that is and this is comes back to our walls and what needs to happen inside the walls.
That's right.
We live in a world of relativism.
Right.
We live in a world of relative truth, and we know the Bible teaches absolute truth.
Yep.
And our world doesn't want to accept absolute truth. Red is red, blue is blue. Like even when you think that basic, think about it. Well,
Yeah.
that basic, you're teaching absolute truth.
Yeah.
Okay, red. Now you can call red what you can call it whatever you want to, but that's not. No, it's red.
Yeah.
And blue is blue. Yes is yes, no is no. Those are absolute truths.
Yep.
Well, the world wants to rip away from us any element of absolute truth.
Yeah.
And make it relative. And all of a sudden we're going to get because now our sexual identity is relative.
Yeah.
It used to be absolute, but it's not absolute anymore.
I mean, it's to the point where one of my children has been put in a situation where they are being asked to call somebody that they know is a boy by other pronouns, and they're like, "What do I do?" Right? And so, these are the questions that we're asking. But it's so interesting. Romans 1 speaks to this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where the things that are plain of this world, that whether that God exists and his creation order and all these things are no longer accepted as plain, right? Truths, right? They're now subjective. So everything's relative until you bring truth in.
Yeah.
Right.
Then it's not relative to them anymore because now you're putting a limit on what I can
Right.
believe, right? But there are limits even to people who believe in relativity. There's limits,
Right.
right? And so this is where us training our kids to understand what God's truth is, and then how to stand firm on that in a way
Yeah.
that is biblical, and where we can be gracious to the world, but also stand on God's truth.
Yeah.
Right, where we're not compromising, but we're
Yeah.
also not pushing people away to never hear the gospel again.
Yeah.
So let's take advantage of this opportunity to help maybe some of our parents that are listening to this.
Yeah.
So how did you instruct your child in that context as to what to call that person?
So I don't know if this is right or wrong. I'll just be frank.
Sure,
I mean, there's
sure.
two ways you can handle it.
Because I'm thinking of an answer, and
Yeah.
I don't know if it's right or wrong either. But
Yeah.
Right.
So there are I think two appropriate responses, and I think there's other responses that are not appropriate. I don't think it's appropriate to call a person by their select pronouns when it's not true. But how we handle that matters, right? So in this case, I'm trying not to give what child it is away.
right, yeah,
But they came and said, "Dad, what do I do?" I said, "Well, what is their name? What name do they go by?" Right? So let's call them by their name instead.
you know what's amazing, dude? That is the exact answer that I guess the Holy Spirit kind of brought to my heart when you guys began talking about that.
Yeah.
So I think you're spot on.
Yeah.
Call them their name.
Or even their chosen name. Right?
That's right.
Just call them by their name.
Just call them their name.
Right? It's their name. The other is to be gracious and say, you know, if you quote unquote misgender somebody, and say, I'm sorry. I know you say you're this, but I believe you're this, and I'm not trying to be rude. But just know that's why. You know, so you can be gracious in it, but I would go back to the name. Right.
I agree.
I think if you're just sticking people, like you're sticking a hornet's
Yeah.
nest and you're
Yeah.
trying to pick a fight,
Right.
I don't think that's Christ-like. I really don't.
Yeah.
I mean, Christ was gracious to people.
That's
He also
right.
said he wasn't. We want to say that God's all love all the time, and Christ said, "Go sin no more."
Yeah.
Right. There was an expectation that He loves you, but
Yeah.
there is a transformation that has to happen.
That's right.
Right. So He was gracious, but had expectations.
Yeah.
In this case, you know, we need to be gracious to people, and we can't expect the world to accept us
Right.
and our beliefs. So
Right.
let's be gracious. And so I think the best way to handle it is really to call somebody by their name.
Yeah. I think that's spot on.
So ask them what their name is.
Yeah. I mean, if you come here and tell me your name is Tree,
Yeah.
I may not think it's real smart, but I'm gonna call you Tree.
All right. Sequoia.
Sequoia, dude,
Sequoia?
whatever. Like if
All
you,
right.
yeah, dude, I'm in. You know, Redwood, what's up? You know, but I'm not going to go, man. Do you really know how ridiculous that sounds?
Yeah. But
You know, do you understand? Like because at the end of the day, I'm more concerned about your heart than I am your name.
that's right.
Right? I'm more concerned, and I think that's what we have to understand in situations like this is that you're never going to get in an argument with somebody and convince them of something cultural without a change of heart.
That's right. I think Mike Taylor.
and
really,
we fight the wrong battles a lot of times.
That's right. I think Mike Taylor really spoke to this when he came last October, and really spoke to what it looks like to live in a post-Christian world.
Absolutely.
Doing ministry over in England.
Yep.
He really kind of helped me and his team really, especially when we went over this June, just how to work within that culture.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We will never win people to Jesus being ugly.
Right.
Yeah.
So we need to stand for truth.
That's right.
But back to the pronoun thing, how disarming is it when somebody calls you kindly by your name?
Right.
That's right.
Right? Right or wrong?
That's right.
I mean,
That's right.
It's disarming. It automatically builds a bridge
Yeah.
for the gospel,
Absolutely.
whether they accept it or not.
Right. Or whether I like it or not.
That's right.
That's not the point.
That's right.
You know, the
Yeah.
point is I have to love your heart and your soul
Absolutely.
more than the issue you're struggling with.
Yeah, and I think that communicates that, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're just calling, like if I just said, hey, that person, or he did this, or she did
Yeah.
this, or you did this, but
Yeah.
if you call somebody by their name, that says that, to me, that communicates that you care about them as a person more than what they identify as or anything else.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that's a great
Yeah.
answer.
It's
So I think these are the types of things that we understand exist.
yeah.
So let's build the walls. Let's create places and environments where our kids and students can be trained and protected. We can partner with parents, and then they can go out into the world
Yeah.
and they can live and love like Jesus does.
Yeah.
So that people see that, kids can see that, students can see that. And you know, I love that Birdie, you know, is in a school, a little school now, half day for 4 or 5 days, and you know, her lesson that she came home with yesterday was, we never hit people.
Did
And,
she learn it?
well, I'm not assuming she was the one who hit maybe that was the lesson for the day.
Yeah.
But I just thought it was fun. And I thought, you know, it's awesome that Madison has a partner with her that's helping Birdie understand that.
Yeah.
You know, and all those kids that are there understand that, because you know what? That's a good life lesson.
Yep.
You know, because you don't feel good to get it back. You know, so but I think you take that times 1,000. I mean, that's our responsibility as we partner with these parents.
Yep.
You know, moms and dads are dealing with all the other stuff and the hard stuff and the life, and all you guys are in that world right now with your kids. And then so they need us to jump in and link arms with them and partner with them and say, hey, man, we got you. You know, we're going to support you. We're going to encourage you. We're going to pour truth into your kids and students' lives while they're here.
Yeah. So
that, man, we're just reinforcing what you're trying to do at home.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's good. That's good. So to kind of end on this, we read some of those statistics. There was a lot more from the message, but first of all, you know, Jeff, you've been a student pastor. You worked at Lifeway student camp, so you've done a lot with students. Will, you were a student pastor for years, and now have this family discipleship role. So first of all, do these statistics that you brought up yesterday, do they surprise you? And then secondly, what can we do about it? Obviously, we are all right here parents. We've talked a lot about parenting and about grandparenting and our students and our kids. So what can we as parents do about it? But also for the couple who can't have kids, or for the single person who is, if any of those people have made it this far, and we've talked about kids the whole time, I'm impressed you're still listening. But what can we do about it? Like what does this mean practically for us, and how can we engage in this?
Yep.
So does it surprise you, and what can we do about it?
So as a student pastor for 15 years, I say nothing can surprise me anymore. No, unfortunately, those statistics don't surprise me.
Yeah.
And that's just watching how things have progressed over the last 15, 20 years. I also believe that I love what you just brought up, and I think you intentionally brought it up. There is a role for singles and for people who can't have kids. That's called spiritual adoption, where you are bringing people in and loving on them. That's why, like, serving within children's youth ministry, walking alongside parents to disciple their kids. Like, you have a place. You know, one thing when I was a brand new Christian and I thought I was the only Christian in my home, I had a family, the Janics, who their son was my best friend. They brought me in and kind of raised me spiritually.
Yeah.
And I still talk to EJ and Lee J and TJ and GJ, and that's what we call them. And just thank them for what they did in my life. EJ, the father, taught me how to have a quiet time. And he taught me how to pray with my family, and what I do at home, I model after him.
Wow.
Well, he didn't have to. I was a spiritual orphan. Well, spiritual orphans need people to invest, that's singles. That is families who can't have kids, right? That's
senior adults.
I was about to say senior adults. Man, I tell you what, we have such amazing senior adults here who love the next generations and want what's best for them, and they want to raise them up. It has been so fun. Your Wednesday night class that you had the last few weeks, it is so much fun to look in at you guys and see just the heart to raise the next generation. Right. And so be a part of investing in the next generation. Don't stop because you're in a stage of life or in a place where you don't have kids. Like, get fully invested. Get fully invested in the life situation you're in. Like, be okay with that. That's where God has you in that station at that moment. But don't stop there. Always invest in the next generation.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
You have anything on that?
No, I think Will hit it. I think we've, it all goes back to, not to be super simplistic, but we just have to make disciples.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I think the church world has created converts, and we've been really passionate about that, and I think we should be. But really, our task is to make disciples.
That's right.
Jesus didn't say, go make converts. He said, make disciples.
Yep.
And so I think that's what we're kicking. We're picking back up, and we're trying to invest in. And I think it starts with discipling moms and dads on how to disciple their kids. And so we've got to, it's crazy to even say it, but we just got to get God's system back in place.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science, and I know we have a rocket scientists in our church, right? So I think about that every time I say that. But it's not rocket science.
Spoiler alert, it's not me.
You're right. It's nobody here. It's not rocket science. But, God laid it out. There's not a better plan. And we have to facilitate it in the context of our culture and time and structure and all that kind of stuff. But the plan's the plan.
Right.
That's right.
Right? Moms and dads, disciple your kids. Pour your life into them. Yep. Church, we partner with moms and dads. We partner with the church. We provide those spiritual parents for spiritual orphans that may not have families.
That's right.
So all those things happen. God's plan is the right plan.
And I think the reason why we emphasize that so heavily is because we have the church has missed that for the last 60 to 80 years.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of going hard back to that model.
Yeah.
That was the biblical model. Generations were to invest in generations.
That's right.
It actually worked both ways. If you look at the Old Testament, younger generations were to invest in older generations, and older were to invest in younger generations.
Yeah.
They built homes together, right? Because they were supposed to take care of one another.
Right.
That was just part of it, right? And so we are fully invested in it because we believe that parents are the most influential relationship in a child's life.
Yep.
Yeah.
And as you all get older, that relationship changes, right? But it's still the most influential relationship in a life. And then I would say grandparents are right there, friends are there as well. But the number one most important relationship on this earth is parents.
Absolutely.
It's huge. That's great. Also just came to mind obviously prayer. Prayer is huge for our kids, for our students, for those around us in our community that need the gospel and need that discipleship, and also pouring into and serving. We talked about this some too, but serving in those ministries.
Yeah.
There's so many people that I know that teach Sunday school classes, teaching our kids. Sunday school in the kids ministry isn't just daycare, isn't just childcare so that parents can go have their Sunday school class.
That's right.
Like they are being discipled. They're being trained and learning scripture
That's
there
right.
as well. So it's so huge.
And one caveat, I'm going to throw a plug in for Rachel here on this, and for Mike. We lack men investing in those departments.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's nothing more amazing than watching a father come into a children's Sunday school class and roll around with the kids.
Yeah.
That leaves such an amazing memory and mark on a kid's life that a man would come in. Men should be the spiritual leaders in the church and in the home.
Yeah.
And we need more men in getting involved with the children's ministry and the student ministry.
Absolutely.
That's right.
That's huge. Well, thanks for listening this week. We're looking forward to a great series in Nehemiah as we press on to that. Looking forward to the campaign, getting stuff moving with building projects and tearing houses down. And so a lot of exciting things coming up. But Will, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Today.
This was fun.
Yeah.
I was a little nervous. I was really nervous at first.
We're just hanging out talking.
It's laid back.
Yeah, it's good stuff. But thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
Let's build the walls.
Build the walls.